Greetings to all of you who have come to the Mind Insight channel. Ladies and gentlemen, just said no to a favor and now you cannot sleep. You are experiencing an evolutionary survival mechanism hardwired into your amygdala. Your brain treats minor social frictions as a literal threat, burning massive amounts of glucose to keep you hyper-vigilant. You proudly defend this habit of accommodating everyone, but it is actually a fundamental irrationality. You are manipulating your environment to feel safe by never saying no, terrified of the slightest rejection. You sacrifice executive function just to manage someone else's minor disappointment. Your prefrontal cortex is a tired riverboat captain steering a leaky vessel while your cortisol is drunk. This fawning steals vital energy needed to regulate your nervous system. You are actively degrading your prefrontal cortex. You trade peace for a cheap dopamine hit of social approval, causing a 40% higher risk of clinical burnout. You are living entirely on someone else's schedule. When the room grows quiet, the true cost of your limitless patience reveals itself. In reality, you are a chronic avoider, retreating to a state of perpetual compliance to numb the anxiety of facing a conflict. The avoidance paradox ensures 5 minutes of relief from saying yes, but magnifies your baseline anxiety by 10 times the next day. You sit in a still room, entirely depleted. Chronic rumination drains glucose reserves rapidly. Ruminating for 1 hour causes severe decision fatigue by 1 in the afternoon. You use stress as fuel, equating rest with moral failure. You are destroying your adrenal system, marching toward catastrophic burnout. Your amygdala acts like a startled mule kicking down barn doors over a message. The dangerous myth is that you just need to think positive. You cannot positive think out of a biological alarm belt. Cognitive suppression spikes your sympathetic nervous system. Prioritizing someone else rehearses the neural pathway of self-neglect. Regulate your body. To realize drawing a line is your absolute right. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you utter the word no, your nervous system initiates a chemical cascade lasting exactly 90 seconds. According to the Journal of Behavioral Decision-Making, this wave of cortisol is what you feel as crippling guilt. Your brain treats negative social feedback as a literal threat to your survival, burning massive amounts of glucose. The most dangerous myth you have been sold is that you need to explain your boundaries. Over-explaining spikes your sympathetic nervous system and invites the other person to negotiate your limits. Your amygdala hijacks your logic, making you feel responsible for their disappointment. This is where the gray stone method becomes your absolute neurological shield. Becoming a gray stone means stripping all emotional inflection from your voice and offering absolute stillness. True power does not lie in a shouting match or a tearful, desperate apology. True power is the profound ability to refuse to explain your boundaries more than exactly one time. By holding firm, you force the prefrontal cortex back online and tell the amygdala to stand down. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot positive think your way out of a biological alarm bell. Action precedes motivation, and boundaries require clinical protocols over empty affirmations. First, use the physiological side to shift the nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest. Take 2 quick inhales through the nose and 1 long exhale through the mouth. Second, practice cognitive diffusion by shifting your internal dialogue to create psychological distance. Do not tell yourself you are a selfish failure. Say out loud, I am currently having the thought that saying no makes me bad. Third, you must practice writing down 3 distinct reasons why you absolutely deserve personal space. You must completely shatter the broken belief that saying no to others is an act of pure selfishness. Setting a boundary is a door, not a wall, and tolerating temporary anxiety is necessary. Stop fighting your biology and start managing your cognitive bandwidth. Comment, I choose myself below to commit to your own psychological freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate psychological leverage belongs to the person who is entirely willing to walk away without a single drop of theatrical drama. You have been conditioned to believe that preserving a relationship requires endless negotiation, but true autonomy requires a necessary degree of calm cruelty. This is the profound realization that your cognitive bandwidth is finite. When you constantly bend your own boundaries to regulate the emotions of others, you suffer a complete loss of autonomy, effectively living entirely on someone else's schedule. You must learn to tolerate the temporary anxiety of disappointing others. Asked, the moment you state your limit, the other person might react with anger. Your instinct will be to rush in and fix their mood. Do not fill the quiet air with justifications. Let the space remain completely still. Let them experience the discomfort of a closed door. You have absolutely every right to be disliked by others when you do the right thing for your mental stability. By choosing yourself, you reclaim the 2 hours of peak productivity that you would have otherwise destroyed. Ladies and gentlemen, the refusal to engage in unnecessary debates is the hallmark of a highly regulated nervous system. When you justify your decisions, you signal insecurity to a brain built on a threat detection model. According to clinical protocols, venting or over-explaining rehearses the neural pathway of anger, strengthening baseline reactivity. Your goal is absolute detachment. You must shift from seeking understanding to simply delivering information. If someone demands an explanation for your absence, politely state your boundary and remain completely quiet. Your peace is far more valuable than their approval. People-pleasing steals your energy and causes chronic cortisol elevation, leading to a 40% higher risk of clinical burnout. Do not let the fear of being perceived as cold force you into chronic ruminations. The ostrich effect makes you avoid negative information because the brain miscategorizes it as a physical threat. Stop avoiding the reality that some connections are parasitic. Step into your autonomy, protect your vital glucose reserves, and walk forward without a single backward glance. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate goal of boundary setting is not to punish the other person, but to restore absolute peace to your own nervous system. When you stop emitting the weak signals of a chronic people pleaser, you stop draining your vital glucose reserves. You are no longer living entirely on someone else's schedule, desperately trying to manipulate your environment to feel safe. According to clinical neurobiology, true healing begins when you stop fawning and start managing your cognitive bandwidth. Change does not come from miraculously convincing toxic individuals to respect you. It comes from the profound realization that you do not need their validation to survive. Every time you choose stillness over a desperate explanation, you force your prefrontal cortex back online. Asked. You step out of the avoidance paradox and stop the chronic cortisol elevation that actively degrades your brain. Let the quiet settle in the room. You will feel a wave of temporary anxiety, but that is simply the amygdala learning a new baseline of safety. You are no longer a leaky vessel steered by a tired riverboat captain. You are the master of your own psychological domain. Ladies and gentlemen, the path to emotional freedom requires you to stop fighting your biology and embrace the clinical protocols of cognitive diffusion. When the guilt tries to creep back in at 2 in the morning, remember that your brain is simply doing its job to protect you from perceived social threats. Acknowledge the thought, let it pass, and remain steadfast in your quiet resolve. By refusing to rehearse the neural pathway of self-neglect, you are actively rebuilding the executive function of your brain. You are trading the cheap dopamine of momentary approval for the sustained baseline drive of genuine self-respect. This is the science of behavioral change, moving from chronic burnout to a life of measured, deliberate intention. Disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational purposes, based on clinical psychology and neurobiology, and does not replace professional medical advice. If you found value in this deep dive into the human mind, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for choosing yourself today, and we will see you in the next episode of Mind Insight.